Oshkosh Common Council, May 11, 2021 meeting. Can we please call the roll?
Ford,
Here.
Mugrower,
Here.
Hanson,
Here.
Miller, Miller,
Here.
Wojciechowski,
Here.
Erickson,
Here.
Palmieri,
Here.
present 7.
All right, and Councilmember Ford will lead us in the invocation followed by the Pledge of Allegiance.
As we gather tonight, we are grateful for the good things that have come to this city. May our decisions always be ones that are for the well-being of all whom we govern. I pledge allegiance
Pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic
of
for
the
which
republic
it
for which it stands,
one
one
nation,
nation,
under God,
under God,
indivisible, with
indivisible,
liberty and justice for
liberty and
all.
justice for all. Okay, and this evening we have a proclamation for Nurses Month. Pam, do we have anyone here to receive the proclamation? I'm not sure if we were able to confirm someone attending or not.
I am unaware of that.
All right, thank you. Whereas registered nurses across the country constitute our nation's largest healthcare profession, and the depth and breadth of the registered nursing profession meets the different and emerging healthcare needs of the American population in a wide range of settings, and whereas the American Nurses Association works to chart a new course for a healthy nation that relies on increasing access to primary and preventative health care, which will require better utilization of all our nation's registered nursing resources. And whereas the demand for registered nursing services is greater than ever due to the aging of the American population, the continuing expansion of life-sustaining technologies, and the explosive growth of home health care services. And whereas the cost-effective, safe, and high-quality healthcare services provided by registered nurses will be an increasingly important component of the healthcare delivery system in the future. And whereas, along with the American Nurses Association, the Wisconsin Nurses Association has declared May as Nurses Month, with the theme Nurses Make a Difference, a nod to nurses' sheer numbers, over 90,000 in Wisconsin, their unparalleled impact during the pandemic and healthcare, and an open invitation to thank a nurse for as Nurses Month in Oshkosh and call upon all citizens to join me in honoring the registered nurses who care for all of us, celebrate their accomplishments and efforts to improve the healthcare system, and show appreciation for their work in our community. Thank you. All right, next we have citizen statements to council. Do we have anyone registered for citizen statement to council that are not agenda items?
I have no one registered.
All right. And then we will move on to public hearings. We have several public hearings this evening. The first one is Resolution 21-228, approve final resolution for special assessments for concrete pavement, asphalt pavement, sidewalk, new and rehabilitation, and driveway aprons relating to contract number 21-01, Amro Road, 250 feet west of North West Haven Drive to Brooks Lane, and B, North West Haven Drive, Amro Road to 300 feet south of Amro Road. Do we have anyone registered to speak on 21-228?
I have no one registered.
And a second call for citizen comment on 21-228. And a third and final call for anyone wishing to speak to 21-228.
Is that the contract for Amro Road?
Yes.
I guess we would like to comment on it. Shane Roth and Bill Karsnian.
All right. Welcome. Thank you. Go ahead.
I guess we're just unclear as to why the assessment came about. Our understanding was that when we're pretty new to Amro Road, and we were told in the beginning when we were purchasing this building that assessments to Oshkosh residents weren't going to happen, that the town of Algoma was going to take care of the cost of the road. And so I guess I'm unclear as to where, our meeting was, or established, so that we could comment, in the direction of how the voting and those types of things were going to be established in regards to the assessment of the road, and then we get a bill or we get a notification saying that, we have assessment dues. I guess I'm just unclear as to, how this all came about.
Sir, just a clarification. So are you referring to item A, that portion of Amro Road, or item B?
Guess I'm unclear as to which one is which.
Okay, so A is 250 feet west of Northwest Haven Drive to Brooks Lane. And item B is Amro Road to 300 feet south of Amro Road.
That would be item A then.
Item A, okay.
Yeah.
All right, well, perhaps we'll ask staff to address that as council deliberates. All right, thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to speak to this item? All right, we will close public comment and bring it back to council for a motion and a second.
So moved.
All right, motion by
Second.
Erickson, second by Ford. Discussion. Councilmember Ford.
I guess I would love if city staff could address the gentleman's comment.
Sure, I'll defer
City
to
manager?
Mr. Robbie. He made me aware of this person's concern this morning. So, Mr. Robbie, if you could explain the situation here.
Yes, when those properties were coming into town, the previous town administrator had not approached the city to cost share in the city's portion of the streets. I believe the previous town administrator, his plan had been to just do the street with town funding. After he left the town and the new town administrator came in, he approached the city and asked for the city to participate in our share based upon the percentage of the street frontage that was in the city versus in the town. And as council recalled, you approved that intergovernmental agreement with the town of Algoma to cost share in this project probably about 6 months ago.
Other council comments or questions? Councilmember Miller.
Thank you, Mayor. James, so this person was unaware that his situation has changed or had changed based on the change of leadership there, basically.
They were made aware of the impending special assessments, just like all other city residents are made aware of impending assessments.
Okay, so they weren't left behind in the information flow?
Everyone for all of these public hearings and all of these notices, whether they were Amro Road or any of the other projects, received the same level of notification as any other special assessment project.
Okay, thank you.
So Mr. Roth, did that answer your question?
It really didn't, because I don't see where we saw the verification of those change assessments other than what we received, in the most recent, which is what brought us to this meeting today.
The notice he received is the one that's required by state statute.
Other council members' discussion? All right. Please call, oh, I'm sorry, Council Member Anson.
Is there any way that in the future, if changes do happen like that, the public that could be notified about it? Seeing that it did, Mr. Robbie said about 6 months ago, it changed from just the town funding to working with the city on it. Was that notified ever? Or was that just within a council meeting that was established?
The intergovernmental agreement was done via a council meeting. As city staff, we are unaware of any conversations that the town may have had with these property owners. So there would have been no way that we would have known that there was any change to notify anyone of.
Okay, thank you. So that would have been on the town's part to notify them then, not the city's.
Can
They
I
were the
comment
ones
on
that had
that?
made,
Yeah, go ahead.
I had a conversation with Jason now, back when we looked at purchasing the building, and he was fully aware of our concerns with the construction of the road. When this parcel of land was supposed to be annexed from the town of Algoma to the city of Oshkosh. I had numerous conversations with him.
Yeah, that wouldn't have been Jason now. That may have been Jeff now, who's
Jeff now,
our
sorry.
GIS planner, but he would have no knowledge of anticipated street projects. Oftentimes, residents, when they purchase property, they'll get what's called a city letter, and the city letter identifies any anticipated special assessments. James, I don't know if this may have been in our capital improvement plan, and I don't know if, with COVID and everything, what we did last year with respect to our upcoming capital improvement program, but that, I can't remember how that was done last year for this year's projects. We do something in addition to this hearing. Typically, as part of the capital improvement process. James, do you recall any similar meeting?
yes, we sent the usual neighborhood meeting letters out to all neighboring property owners. While due to COVID, we did not have a neighborhood meeting. We did record a video of the presentation that we would normally give to the neighborhood meeting. And in the letter that was sent to all property owners, they were directed as to where they could find that information on the website and how to contact us with any questions.
Member Mugarauer.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I guess just to kind of wrap a bow on one part of this conversation before I go down a different hole on this one. From the city aspect, we have complied with every rule and regulation that we have on the books, as well as state regulations in regards to special assessments and notifications of those. Is that correct, James?
Yes.
Good. Mr. Ross, it's a big pill to swallow. I'm seeing, it's $24,000 for your corner lot or for your two parcels there.
We also had water last year that we weren't anticipating either, which was another 18,000.
It's
So we got
quite the pill to swallow.
2 years that we were never made aware of until, hey, here's your bill.
Well, from the city side of this, we've gone through our process, which is to mail out several notifications, as well as have different meetings to make sure that residents, property owners are aware of the process that we use, and that they can then participate in that process. And from everything that we're being told and from what we do and what we've known that we do, the property owner yourself would have received several notifications for those parts of the process, today being one of those. Today's the last step in that process. But on the second part of this, this is just another example of why, I'm gonna be really blunt, why our special assessments just suck. These bills, this is not a good way to do business. I understand this is where we are at. This is where we've gotten after 30 or 40 years of this process. But if you look at these assessments, and this isn't even the one I'm going to lose my mind on, that's going to be on the next one. For some of these parcels, 10, 15, that's on the low end. We're talking $25,000, $30,000 for special assessments for parcels that have a value of $100,000, $140,000. That is an outrageous amount of money to expect property owners to take out a loan for and to just pay for, considering they don't get exclusive use out of that. Everybody uses the roads. Everybody uses the sidewalks. We're requiring to be put in. So, Mr. Roth, I feel you on this one. I'm going to vote no on this, whether it's symbolic or not. But it's time that this thing gets changed here in the city of Oshkosh. So, appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt.
Other council members' comments? All right, please call the roll. Oh, wait, I'm sorry. Councilmember Erickson.
Thank you. I'll just say this is not easy either. And being in this situation, having to pay this amount of money is just, I can't imagine. I have not been affected by that personally, but I am not a fan of how this has had to play out. Just a quick question for maybe City Manager Roloff. If we were not to approve this, what would happen?
If special assessments are not approved, then the general taxpayer will have to fund this. It is not budgeted. We would assume that, all of us would assume that, and this would be a rarity because every other project has been paid for with special assessments, and council would be setting a precedent that would be very difficult to reverse.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Hanson.
I just want to, I agree it's a lot of money. And I don't know how to pick sides just yet. But I'm wondering, for all the people who've already paid previously for special assessments to redo their roads, are the prices just as high? I don't know, from previous ones, or are these extra special assessments? Because I don't know how to go about it as people that have already paid for it, how they'll react and how we'll see it fit that everyone is treated fairly and the compromise happens correctly. Can anyone else maybe put in their 2 cents on that? I'm just trying to wrap my head around everything.
Councilmember Ford.
Yeah, I'm happy to weigh in. I mean, I appreciate the sentiment of all my fellow council members and what City Manager Roloff had to say. Like it or not, this is the policy we have right now. I think that we can all agree that the policy is deficient. I'm voting yes, because by voting no, I think we're making a policy here essentially to say that instead of special assessments, we're putting all special assessments on the general tax rolls. And I don't feel comfortable making that decision tonight, but I guess I'll ask City Manager Roloff. I know that we have a study out there dealing with changing our special assessment policy. I know that's a road that we've been down prior to my involvement here on City Council. And I guess, could you give the public an update of where that's at? I apologize, I did not ask you this ahead of time, but it came up.
Other council members have extended that question. So for several of you who asked, even though Councilmember Ford was not one of them, I think you're all owed this answer. As you may be aware of, the council had considered a change in policy to replace special assessments with a transportation fee 2 years ago. The council ultimately rejected that approach, but asked the committee to take a look at different options. Since that time, based on information we've received, a traffic-based transportation fee is something that we are investigating. I anticipate that the contractor, the consultant who we hired out will have something to show staff internally next month. And then we'll work, tweak that. And after that gets evaluated, corrected, we'll forward that to council in a final report. And as a courtesy to the Chamber of Commerce, which was very much against this proposal, as a courtesy to them because of the business community, we'll let them know. But, obviously this has been something that has been long awaited. Mr. Roth is just being made aware of this now. And Mr. Roth represents a lot of different people on that very topic. So probably sometime in July. I've been generally saying summertime, and I'd rather stick to that because that gives me a little bit of time. But the consultant who's now doing this is looking at it for several communities throughout the state. So they've got a lot of work ahead of them. But I think we'll be about 90% there when this report's done to give you everybody within 90% accuracy what potential traffic-based transportation fee might look like if the council were to be interested in that as an option.
So, Mr. Roloff, this may be a little bit redundant for one of the other council members' questions, but when Councilmember Erickson asked what would happen if we don't pass this, I'm going to add to that, what would happen if we laid this over until we had that report and made a decision on this policy once and for all?
From a cash flow standpoint, this very question came up 2 years ago. The idea would be that at the time we had budgeted that if the fee was adopted later in the year, that we were probably going to incur some cost that would not be recovered immediately by the fee. That would still be the case. So that would create a short-term cash flow issue in a new fund that we would eventually have to make up over time. And that's, the answer, even though I wasn't anticipating that question tonight, we would have a cash flow issue in the short run while we made that up. If council chose to do that, but the problem was that the idea was, the fee is going to get enacted. And then when it wasn't, we ended up doing the very same assessments. And so that's the danger of what you're suggesting. But we did it 2 years ago. So I can't tell you couldn't do it now when you could do it 2 years ago.
Yes, because I seem to recall we talked about once a policy would pass that it could potentially be retroactive because the billing didn't come out for a year. I'm sorry, Councilmember Ford.
Oh, no, I would just add to City Manager Roloff's comments, just to request that when we do have a new policy in place, no one wants to be the last one that paid under the old policy. If there's any ability to provide some relief for some of those last folks in some logical way, I do hope we explore it. No idea if that's feasible or what that looks like, but I hope we look into it.
I will share with the council that when that was done in 2019, the people who had their projects done in 2018, who hadn't been sent their bill yet, also asked the council do them. So it's like, who makes it under the wire to get counted? And that's anybody who hasn't gotten the bill yet is going to make the same pitch to you. So you're going to have to draw the line somewhere. And that's the tough call, because you got to make a justification why them and not me. And you're going to hear that a lot.
Councilmember Miller.
Thank you, Mayor. I would just caution my fellow council members that the dollar amount isn't quantifiable. I was on the council when this issue came up. And Mark, correct me if I'm wrong, but we can't quantify that cash flow shortage. But more importantly, the cash flow shortage will grow until this issue is resolved, because everybody and their brother is going to want a piece of this pie. And I respect that. I understand that. But this could really turn into a financial nightmare if we don't think this thing through tonight about laying this over. That's just my 2 cents. Thank you.
And I appreciate Councilmember Miller and Councilmember Ford weighing in on that. And I'll be supporting it, but also anxiously awaiting, as we have patiently for some time, for us to move that third round of review on replacing special assessments on behalf of our residents. So any other discussion before we call the roll? All right, please call the roll.
Ford,
Aye.
Overhour,
No.
Hanson,
Aye.
Miller,
Aye.
Wojciechowski,
Aye.
Erickson,
Aye.
Palmieri,
Aye.
carried 6-1.
All right, our next resolution 21-229, approve final resolution for special assessments for concrete pavement, asphalt pavement, sidewalk new and rehabilitation, driveway aprons, sanitary sewer main and laterals new and relay, water main and laterals new and relay, and storm sewer mains and laterals new and relay relating to contract number 21-03. A, Oregon Street, West 28th Avenue to 200 feet south of West Waca Avenue. B, Fond du Lac Road, 200 feet north of Stony Beach Road to 200 feet south of Waca Avenue. And C, Waca Avenue, 200 feet west of Fond du Lac Road to Lake Winnebago and 200 feet east and 200 feet west of Oregon Street. Do we have anyone here registered to speak on 21-229?
I do not have anyone registered for this public hearing.
All right, a second call for public comment on 21-229. And a third and final call for 21-229. We will close public comment and council, look to council for a motion and a second.
So moved.
Second.
Ford and Mugerauer, discussion. Council members, discussion on 21-229. Seeing none, please call the roll.
Ford,
Aye.
Mugerauer,
No.
Hanson,
Aye.
thank you, Miller,
Aye.
Wojciechowski,
Aye.
Erickson,
Aye.
Palmieri,
Aye.
carried 6-1.
All right, we have two more public hearings. The next one is 21-230. Approve final resolution for special assessments for concrete pavement, asphalt pavement, sidewalk new and rehabilitation, driveway apron, sanitary sewer main and laterals new and relay, water main and laterals new and relay, and storm sewer mains and laterals new and relay related to contract number 21-04. A, West 9th Avenue, Oakwood Road to Linden Oaks Drive. B, West 9th Avenue, Paul's Place to 750 feet west of Paul's Place. Is there anyone registered for 21-230?
Yes, we have 3 individuals. Our first one is Michelle Posner.
Michelle, are you here with us?
Yes, I am. So
Michelle.
my
Okay, thank you and welcome.
okay, my comment is just kind of reiterating some of what the gentleman spoke about for Amro Road. I am a homeowner on 9th Street. My house was built in 1947 and I'm assessed $29,000 for the road. I just don't, you know. Yeah, so while I can appreciate that you sympathize with us, I just am really looking for something, some type of a compromise, something where we can work something out. something to figure out. To hold off. I mean, you guys kind of said it when you said the special assessments. It's kind of stink. So I guess I'm just, voicing my opinion on what I think. I mean, that doesn't include city sewer and water, kind of like the other guy said, we got hit with that too. So we're looking at $40,000 now. I'm never gonna get that out of my house, and I can see how some other people are feeling as well. So I'm just kind of voicing my opinion, hoping that some type of a compromise can be made to help us out with the situation.
Our next speaker is Michael Gumto.
Michael, are you here with us?
Yes, I am.
All right, please, sir, go ahead. Welcome.
Good evening. So basically, I have kind of a reiteration of what everybody has said so far here. I don't know how helpful my statement will really be, but I feel like my opinion should be known on the matter. If not for me, hopefully for someone else in the future that might have to deal with the special assessment tax. I feel like it's pretty obvious that the special assessment tax for this project or any of these projects really is just far too high for an individual property owner to burden, especially for in some cases. We're talking tens of thousands of dollars. In our case, we're looking at $23,000 in special assessments for our property. But to kind of go on with that, I know that 9th Street is in rough shape, and I think we can all agree that it needs to it needs some level of repair, and I understand that. But I don't know that it should be repaired or improved to where it's been suggested that it be improved to. Again, I'm paying 23 grand, and I'm not going to get that out of my property or home. It's not going to be worth $23,000 more when you guys are done with the project. It's just that plain and simple. And the best analogy that I can come up here is it's almost like going to a car lot, looking at a luxury SUV, saying, yep, that's the one, without looking at the price tag, when the reality is, we can only afford a mid-size sedan. I don't know how else to put that. But that's about the clearest analogy I can think of in my head. And I guess that kind of brings me to the point of I don't understand why other alternatives that are lower cost weren't thought through. And maybe they were, and I just wasn't aware. But for example, when I look at the assessment for like 9th Street, do we really need sidewalk now? Could you just, delay paving or laying the sidewalk out by like 5 or 10 years to lower the burden of this cost at least a little bit? I mean, it's not going to save a lot of people a ton, but in our case, it would save us like $4,500 if you just forewent the sidewalk. But that also brings me to the point of, are there other places in the project where we could have pared it down and cut the cost? So basically, to go along with that, I also don't understand why, I'm responsible to pay, or anybody in the assessment zone for that matter is responsible to pay for such a large amount of special assessments when others in the neighborhood, they're going to stand to benefit from the same improvements as me, but they're not going to pay an additional dime in taxes. So that, I don't know, that just doesn't feel right to me. It just doesn't feel like a fair way of funding this project at all. And then finally, I'll just add this. I think it was Mr. Miller who mentioned a financial nightmare for the city. I mean, you're making a financial nightmare for your residents. I don't understand it. There's got to be a better way to fund this project than what we're looking at here for special assessments. And I know that's been a running theme in the city over the past several years, or probably beyond that, for finding an alternative, but that hasn't happened yet. And in my opinion, that's kind of a failure of the city. I understand there's been, turnover in the common council over the past year, so maybe some of that changes, but it certainly doesn't sound like it tonight.
All right.
That's all.
Thank you, Mr. Gumto. And Pam, I believe you said there was a third individual speaking.
Yes, Peter Youngbacher.
Mr. Youngbacher, are you here with us?
Yes, I am.
All right, please go ahead, sir. Welcome.
Welcome. Yeah, thank you very much. I appreciate the audience. I had an opportunity to listen to the previous conversation, so I'll try not to be redundant. I did have 2 exhibits that I submitted to the clerk's office. I have 5 parcels that are on the north side of 9th Avenue that collectively will have assessments of about $200,000. It's not really the assessment dollar amount as much as the procedure that I wanted to talk about tonight. We have a couple of very novel situations that I've visited with Justin about. One being a lot that could potentially be assessed on 3 sides, which apparently is not something that's happened before, but for an alley, and there's no alley here. The second is 3 lots, or actually 4 lots, that because of the depth of the lots beyond 200 feet, have well, they're exempt from the 50% credits that are given normally to 2-sided lots. So what happened is a situation of assessments that I'm experiencing on these lots in one case are more than 100% of the value of the lot, fair market value of the lot. And in the 3 other cases or 4 other cases are approaching 80% of the fair market value of the lot. And I think part of the problem, and I know this won't be solved tonight, and I think the theme from the other citizens who spoke earlier is that in this particular case on 9th Avenue, we're being asked to pay for an improvement that has benefits that really go beyond the immediate lot. This is a major arterial. It's designed to accommodate significantly larger traffic flows and other things related to that. The pricing is at the top end of the cost spectrum because of all of that. And I think part of what the city should think about going forward as they develop a policy on assessments is to address perhaps major arterials and how those major arterials might be financed a bit differently. But also in my situation where you've got a corner lot and no benefit for the previous assessments that have been accrued to the site. Again, I don't know if you can see the exhibits. How can we get those exhibits out in front of everyone? Are they on your desks or are they going to be at an overhead?
Mr. Newman, were those submitted in advance so that they can be shown or no?
They were submitted digitally and they were dropped off before 4 o'clock today.
I believe they were in your red folders.
Yes, I do not have an electronic copy of those.
This would be red folder 2. There's 2 attachments to red folder 2. One says Youngbacher handout, so I have a pretty good idea that's Peter. And then there's also another one that Mr. Youngbacher provided.
Yeah, the first one was just to give you context of what area we're talking about. And the second one has the 5 lots specifically identified that are subject to the assessment that we're talking about this evening. And the 4 lots to the right have assessments that are full assessments on 9th Avenue, even though we previously paid for street, sewer, water, curb, gutter, sidewalks, everything for those lots already. And the reason that we're being fully assessed is there's a provision currently that says if the lot has a depth of more than 200 feet, it doesn't get the benefit of the 50% discount or the previous assessment and the credit now for the new assessments that are being applied to the property. The way this subdivision is designed, there is no access on 9th Avenue but for Quail Run Drive. It's a loop in and a loop out. So you can't access lots 1, 2, or 3, those lots to the right on that exhibit, but for Wilderness Drive. They cannot be subdivided further because they're subject to restrictive covenants. So there's no ability to create 2 lots that I think was the theory of the Public Works Department and perhaps prior councils to not allow the assessment credit for lots that had previously paid for special assessments in a prior period. So from a policy standpoint, I'm not against the assessments. As you know, I've invested a lot in this community, and I appreciate what the community has done in terms of creating infrastructure for us to develop our projects. I do have sympathy, though, however, with the others who have spoken, particularly if I were a single family homeowner there now, recognizing that I'm being asked to pay for costs that have benefits that are derived by the community, much more so than a normal 32-foot wide street that has a much less limited traffic count and transportation benefit for the larger community. So I'm sympathetic to that argument. I am, however, trying to stress that we have a policy here with this issue about lot depth, and in my case, a 3-cornered lot that is going to create assessments that in one case will be more than the value of the lot. That just from an economic standpoint is bad public policy. Secondly, we'll have assessments for the other lots, including the ones that will be created when Quail Run Drive's connection is created, that will be approaching 80% of the current fair market value of lots. Again, it's a bad public policy to encourage development when you have those extraordinary special assessment costs that are being placed on the property.
Mr. Youngbecker, could you conclude, please?
I was. Thank you, Lori. So I think what I'm asking for, my ask tonight is that the policy about the 200-foot depth not be applied here, and that we are given credit for the previous assessments, so we get the half credit for the work that's done on 9th Avenue. And the same is true for the future subdivision that would occur when Quail Run Drive connects at the west end of the site. And that the lot number 1, which has assessments on both sides currently, have no assessment on 9th Avenue because there isn't any precedent in the community for any lot getting 3 assessments on full streets that either the Department of Public Works is aware of or I'm aware of. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. All right. That concludes public comment on resolution 21-230. We'll bring this back to council for a motion and a second.
Mayor, could we call it 2 more times, please?
Oh, my apologies. Yes, a second call for public comment on 21-230. And a third and final call for 21-230.
And then Mayor, there was another email, or there was an email in the packet also. I don't have it in front of me. I want to say it was a gal by the name of Valerie in that folder. If we could just mention that into the record.
Yes, Madam Mayor, that the city clerk's correct. Valerie Cohn-Gerke at 3041 West 9th Avenue. That was in the same one as Mr. Youngbacher's map. I thought it was a letter from Mr. Youngbacher. It was a letter from Ms. Cohn-Gerke.
All right. We will note that there was further correspondence from Valerie Cohn-Gerke, 3041 West 9th Avenue, regarding 21-230. And a third and final reading, or a third and final call for public comment. All right, we'll close public comments and bring it back to council for a motion and a second.
So moved.
Second.
Mugrauer and Miller seconds. Discussion on 21-230. Councilmember Mugrauer.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Actually, right away, can City Manager Roloff and/or Public Works Director Robbie, would you mind trying to address Mr. Youngbacher's question or the comments about some of the uniqueness of those particular undeveloped sites along 9th Ave and how they relate to as he kind of mentioned, or as he did mention specifically, we've got some uniqueness that we haven't encountered before possibly. How's that fit within our policy? And is that something that we want to continue going forward?
I think Mr. Robbie can answer the bulk of it. There was one point that Mr. Youngbacher made that I just wanted to clarify. And I think some of the other residents had kind of inferred it, but when this is the first time you're ever doing this, as so many of these residents are, they're not familiar with a lot of the history. And I wouldn't necessarily expect a lot of the council members, especially our newer council members, to be aware of this. Our special assessment policy has a variety of things, and Mr. Robbie, I think, will get into the bulk of Mr. Youngbacher's issues. But for residential areas, we assess a maximum width, and we charge 1/3 of that cost of maximum width. So even though the road is 48 feet wide, we assess for residential areas, regardless of how wide that road is, a maximum width of 32 feet and the depth for a standard residential street, not for an overbuilt collector street such as 9th Avenue. 9th Avenue is overbuilt. The city assumes 100% of the cost of the overbuild. So while I think the residents make a very compelling case that the number that they're being assessed is large, it's not because it's a wider street. It's because inflation has taken the cost of that 32-foot wide street and expanded it significantly over the years. And I think you're seeing and hearing this, not just here in Oshkosh, but you've seen the up and down the valley where this issue has been there. So that is just about that, because a lot of people think, I think there's an assumption that I'm assuming the total cost. With a cost of $20,000, it has to be, I'm assuming the whole cost. They're assuming 1/3 of the cost of a 32-foot wide street. The other side of the road, similarly, 1/3 the cost of a 32-foot wide street. Then the city assumes the other third, as well as anything in excess of that 32 feet. Now that varies for commercial, but these are residential properties primarily. So with that, Mr. Robbie is aware of some of Mr. Youngbacher's points. And I guess I would let Mr. Robbie do that. Although if there's a question about the point I made, Madam Mayor, I see Mr. Miller's hand up. I'm happy to answer that question, but the other question's James, that's James' expertise.
Yes, Councilmember Miller, and then perhaps Mr. Robbie. Although due to the uniqueness of this, I guess I would also ask if staff has already talked with Mr. Youngbacher previously about this, just out of curiosity. Councilmember Miller, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mark. My question is just more for the gentleman prior to Mr. Youngbacher, and I apologize if I forgot his name, but Mark, I just want that person to understand what, I mean, as a percentage, what communities use special assessments. I mean, it's north of 95%, isn't it? I mean,
I don't know if I would go that far, but it's still a large number of cities implement special assessments, but the trend has been going away from it. I mean, that's, you've seen that in the Valley, but it's not that they say, well, we're going to let go of it. It's what do we replace it with?
right.
And in the absence of a solution, they've stayed with it. My former community, that was an issue in the recent election. So And you heard that up and down the valley in other communities. So it's certainly a legitimate policy issue, but there's got to be a solution to replace it, because the answer pretty universally is it's not going to be the general taxpayer. It's going to be another method. And the fee has been the popular one where I think Ms. Kongurki referenced wheel tax. Some cities have done that. We've taken a look at that, but obviously, because we're so close, people are asking. But so that's the best answer I have for you, Mr. Miller. The mayor, your question is really more of a Mr. Robbie answer, and because I believe he or a member of his staff did talk to Mr. Youngbacher.
Yes, as Mr. Youngbacher had indicated, he was in conversations with Engineering Division Manager Justin Gierach today. In particular, the one parcel that is fronted on 3 sides by right-of-way, that is very unique. As Mr. Youngbacher indicated, our special assessment policy does contain a provision where a parcel is bordered on 3 sides, with 2 of them being streets and 1 of them being an alley. But this is certainly the first time I have encountered a parcel that has been fronted on 3 sides by streets. So it is a little bit of a unique situation, but as I said, there are a number of them that do have alleys as the 3rd side. One consideration that we could look into is, do we expand that provision of the policy to not just say alley, but all 3rd frontages receive that 50% reduction that's currently listed in the policy. So there are some options there that certainly we could bring to council to amend the policy, and we could have it apply to this parcel if that was council's desire.
And staff wouldn't have any objection to that.
Councilmember Mugarauer.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think that'd be appropriate for staff to put that information together to present to council for us to consider. There are other ones. I know of a few, like you mentioned, the alleyways on corner lots. It'd be appropriate for us to hear that and make a determination if that's something we'd like to do going forward. One thing I want to make sure I point this out, or I make this clear as well. As much as I don't like our current policy, the city subsidizes quite a bit when it comes to road construction projects. So, for example, whether in the next one we're going to talk about CP Street, east of Bowen, doing a major overhaul over there. When we're doing, for example, sanitary laterals and storm sewer laterals, we charge a flat rate no matter what the situation is, and those flat rates are considerably lower than if we were just to do a one-off construction on that lot. So that's a big chunk of these special assessments. When we put in a storm lateral, $750. When we put in a new sanitary lateral, $2,250. The utilities are subsidizing that a bit, and just want to make sure we point that out, that not the full boat, not the full assessment is all road work. There is underground stuff that does benefit the direct property. But just want to make sure that was also pointed out and clear for everyone too. Thanks, James.
Other council member discussion. 21-230. All right, please call. Oh, Councilmember Ford.
Yeah, just real quick. Thank you for all the comments. That was absolutely brutal to listen to, and yeah, I mean, I agree with the gentleman who said that's a failure on our part and something we need to get resolved. Really don't know what else to say. It was brutal to listen to.
All right, please call the roll.
Ford,
Aye.
Mugarauer,
No.
Hanson,
Aye.
Miller,
Aye.
Wojciechowski,
Aye.
Erickson,
Aye.
O'Meara.
Aye.
Carried 6-1.
All right, we'll now move on to resolution 21-231. And do we have registration or email comments for 21-231?
I have no one registered to speak.
Yeah, I was having some challenges with downloading the size of the orange folder attachments right before the meeting. So I apologize if I missed one of those items. All right, no one registered. A second call for public comment on 21-231. My apologies. Approve final resolution of special assessments for concrete pavement, asphalt pavement, sidewalk, new and rehabilitation, driveway aprons, sanitary sewer main and laterals, new and relay, water main and laterals, new and relay, and storm sewer mains and laterals, new and relay relating to contract number 21-05. And a third and final call for public comment. I see City Manager Roloff has his hand up. Oh,
I
mistake.
can wait, Madam Mayor. I just wanted to
All right.
point something out with this one.
All right. Seeing none further, we'll close public comment on 21-231. Do we have a motion and a second from council?
So moved.
Second.
Erickson and Ford, discussion. Any discussion from council members? City Manager?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The reason I wanted to point out something on this one, and I think one of the questions was, why are the assessments so high? And on 9th Avenue, when you compare them to the ones here on CP, they're significantly larger. One of the reasons is because so much of this is based on front footage. And as you get into newer neighborhoods with larger lots, essentially you have fewer homes to pay for street assessments. Whereas you take a look at any of these streets here on any of the properties on CP, much smaller lots. Therefore, the assessment is much less. Some of the things like the storm sewer laterals are identical because by policy, to encourage people to do storm laterals, we charge, it's a heavily subsidized $750, but one parcel $750 versus frontage. And if you have small frontage, it's relatively small. Although I think a $9,000 or $10,000 assessment is nothing to sneeze at. But then when you get to these much larger lots, the frontage is what drives that. So the more, the less dense you have, the higher assessment per household is the net result. That was it. I just wanted to point that out. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Yes, and since that is calculated based on, the length or width of the lots, that adds up. I apologize. I said we were at the last two, but we actually do have two more public hearings here. The next one is 21. I need to take the roll on the last one. Lost my place. On 21-231, please call the roll.
Ford,
Aye.
Blumerower,
No.
Hanson,
Aye.
Miller,
Aye.
Wojciechowski,
Aye.
Erickson,
Aye.
O'Meara,
Aye.
carried 6-1.
All right, now we'll move to resolution 21-232. Approve final resolution for special assessments for concrete pavement, asphalt pavement, sidewalk, new and rehabilitation, driveway aprons, sanitary sewer main and laterals, new and relay, water main and laterals, new and relay, and storm sewer mains and laterals, new and relay relating to contract 2107 A through I. Do we have anyone registered on 21-232?
I do not have anyone registered.
Are there any registered email comments? A second call for public comment on 21-232. And a third and final call for public comment on 21-232. All right, council will take a motion and a second.
So moved.
Mugrauer and Miller, seconds. Then discussion on 21-232. All right, please. Oh, Councilmember Mugrauer.
Sorry, Madam Mayor, I was a little slow
No
there.
worries.
Actually, just for those listening at home wondering why I'm going to vote yes on this one. This one's all about sidewalks and sanitary laterals. There is no street reconstruction as part of this one that I'm seeing, and so I'll be voting in favor of this one this evening.
Any last comments with council discussion on this? All right, please call the roll on 21-232.
Ford,
Aye.
Mugrower,
Aye.
Henson,
Aye.
Miller,
Aye.
Wojciechowski,
Aye.
Erickson,
Aye.
Palmieri,
Aye.
carried 7.
And our last and final public hearing this evening is 21-233, approve final resolution for special assessments for storm sewer laterals relating to contract number 21-220, 21-20, various locations. Is there anyone registered for 21-233?
I have no one registered.
And a second call for public comment on 21-233. Third and final call for public comment 21-233. And we will close public comment. Council motion and a second, please.
So moved.
Miller and Ford, seconds. Discussion. I guess just a quick question for Mr. Robbie. Various locations, do we not list these out for storm sewer laterals, or is there just quite a long list?
It would be a very long list. This is the, kind of hit and miss all over the city based on requests from property owners where they want to receive a storm lateral because they don't already have one, or perhaps where they've been issued orders by the plumbing inspector to stop discharging their sump pump onto the sidewalk or street. So this is literally all over the city.
And there's about 45 of them total in the resolution. We have the properties identified individually, but it's very long.
So it sounds like it's that time of year where we perhaps need to do another public education on that practice. 45, that's a long list.
Yeah, last year was so much in demand that we actually did 2 runs of these last year. Because $750 is what, James, maybe about a quarter of the total cost, if not more?
Yeah, it's certainly a quarter to, maybe even a smaller percentage.
Yeah, this gets rid of a lot of the.
I was gonna say, as Councilmember Mugrower pointed out earlier, this cost is heavily subsidized by the utility.
Councilmember Mugrower.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Actually, that your question and Mr. Robbie's answer flowed right into mine. This is a good thing. These that residents are asking for these things. It helps with stormwater management in neighborhoods. And yeah, the utility heavily subsidizes it, but it's good for the entire system. And yeah, I'll be voting on this one as well in the affirmative. But residents can, for those listening at home, residents can request. If you don't already have one, all you got to do is connect with Public Works, request one. We'll get you on the list. Doesn't mean you'll get it right away, but we'll get you on the list for future construction projects. And it can definitely help out your stormwater management on your parcel. So.
And did I hear that was $750?
That's
All right.
correct, Madam Mayor.
All right. Any further comment from council discussion? Please call the roll.
Ford,
Aye.
Bluebauer,
Aye.
Johnson,
Aye.
Miller,
Aye.
Wojciechowski,
Aye.
Erickson.
Aye.
Palmieri,
Aye.
carried 7.
All right, next we will come to public comment on agenda items. Do we have anyone registered to speak on specific agenda items for later on in the agenda?
Yes, we do. For ordinance number 21-245, we have 2 individuals, Anthony Cantor.
Anthony Kantner, are you with us?
Yes, I am.
All right, please keep your comments limited to the time allotted, and welcome. Thank you. Go ahead.
Welcome. Thank you, Madam Mayor, Common Council, for hearing me today. I own a scooter store down at 300 State Street in downtown Oshkosh here called Komodo Electric Scooters. Currently, I saw the ordinances that we're trying to put in place for electric scooters as we're singling out them more than we are on electronic bikes. I'm very concerned about the safety of people when they're going to be operating these scooters in the city and how we're going to be operating them. I'm concerned about how the traffic board and PED committee allows 28-mile-an-hour e-bikes on the sidewalks, but they will not allow 20-mile-an-hour scooters on the sidewalks. That's something I'm concerned about. I'm also concerned about how the scooters are going to travel over the bridges in the community, because if they can't use the sidewalks like 90% of the bikes do, when people are going over the hills or fast in their cars, it's going to cause accidents, injuries. Another big concern I have. Another thing too is, local community to us, not far from us, Appleton and their nexus up there with the larger population, very close to us. They're allowing them on the sidewalks right now and testing it. They're also allowing them on bike trails too. 2 things that they don't want, that we currently, according to the city attorney, they're not, wasn't advised by the traffic safety board and by the bike and PED committee. I'm very concerned about this because I feel as if I'm being singled out with e-scooters, and a lot of that's because of the rental issues that have come with it and the stigma. Personal ownership, we don't run into as many of the same problems and certain issues. I'm trying to bring a different type of transportation to the community. Just like the street outside my building here on Wagoo, the quality of some of the roads in this community are very poor, very pothole based. To drive these scooters on it, just like bikes don't, that's why they're on the sidewalks. And the amount of pedestrians out on these sidewalks, besides Main Street, where I can totally see where we might not allow them, there's not that many people on the sidewalks during the majority of the day. And people are going to be using these for transportation to get to point A to point B. And that's my big concern. It's just the safety concept of all this and how we're targeting e-bikes that can go 28 miles an hour, but scooters that go 20, we're not allowing. So that's just my main points.
Thank you, Mr. Kantner. And our second person that's registered, please.
Michael Covato.
Michael, are you with us?
I am. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Good evening.
All right. Good evening and thank you. Welcome.
Thank you. So good evening, members of council, city staff. I'm Mike Cavato. I'm with the Global Revenue Department of Bird Rides Incorporated. I work with one of the shared electric scooter companies Mr. Cantor alluded to in his statement. We were the first shared electric scooter company in the world. We're now one of the largest, present in about 150 cities globally. Over the last year, over 100 million rides were taken on shared scooters within the United States alone. So certainly I think there is, that speaks to the benefit that they can bring to communities as an alternative transportation option. We've been heavily investing in communities across the state of Wisconsin, including with launches in Wauwatosa and, as mentioned, Appleton, and those planned within the next couple of weeks for Racine and Sheboygan, as well as several other cities. We'd love to work with city staff to implement a similar program in Oshkosh while addressing the city's unique needs. I know the ordinance proposed does have a number of limitations. Certainly, we'd love to work with the city attorney and city staff to find a way that we can ensure the safety of all residents who might want to use electric scooters, as well as ensure that the city feels comfortable with the level of safety that they bring and the benefit that they do bring to the community, which I think segues very nicely as they are an affordable, environmentally friendly, and reliable transportation option. They also bring considerable economic benefit. with almost 60% of our trips ending in front of a small business. In fact, research from Emory University showed that e-scooters brought almost $14 million in additional spending over a 6-month period to small businesses in Santa Monica. As the industry leader, our scooters are incredibly sophisticated. The geofencing technology we have allows us to track every single scooter via an onboard GPS, digitally control the boundaries that they can operate within, as well as control their speed. Our riders go through a robust safety tutorial and must submit a parking photo at the end of their ride, which is analyzed by a powerful AI to determine if the scooter is in frame. We do want to make sure our fleets are accessible by all, so we also offer the most robust community pricing program, which affords 50% off for those who qualify due to socioeconomic challenges, for veterans, for senior citizens, as well as free rides for all frontline workers for the duration of the COVID-19 pandemic. I'd be very interested in working with the city of Oshkosh to bring in a small fleet of scooters for use by residents and visitors. To be clear, we're not looking for any subsidy, any investment. There is no cost to the city. I'd also like to offer myself up as a resource to the council this evening and in the future, in the event that there's any questions about micromobility in general or BIRD that might come up. And certainly our team will be reaching out to other city staff to further the conversation. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Pam, do we have other items on the agenda that folks are registered to speak on?
No, we do not.
Okay. We will move on to consent agenda. And I'll ask for a motion and a second from council.
So moved.
Mugrauer and Erickson. And discussion on consent agenda. Councilmember Ford.
Yeah, could I pull, am I allowed to pull just part of resolution 18, specifically the appointments to the DEI committee?
Let's see here. That is in 21-243.
Yes.
So this is one resolution.
Excuse me, you would have to pull the entire resolution and then you could divide the issue to vote on it separately, but you'd have to pull the entire resolution.
Okay, then I'd like to please do that.
Okay. Miss 21-243. And we already have our motion in a second. We're pulling 21-243. Any other discussion on consent? All right. Let's call the roll on consent minus 21-243.
Ford,
Aye.
Mugrower,
Aye.
Hanson,
Aye.
Miller,
Aye.
Wojciechowski,
Aye.
Erickson,
Aye.
Palmieri,
Aye.
carried 7.
All right. And we will bring back 21-243 motion and a second.
So moved.
Second.
Erickson and Mugrauer. Okay, discussion. Go ahead, Councilmember Ford.
Yes, so to speak, could we split out the appointments to the DEI committee from the rest of that, please?
We'll need a motion.
Can I make that motion?
And a second?
Second.
Second.
All right, motion by Ford and second by Mugrauer to separate DEI appointments from the remainder of the appointments. Discussion, Councilmember Ford.
I guess just to explain why my brother-in-law is always causing me trouble, and this is a time he's doing it again. He's one of the appointees to the DEI committee, so I want to make sure I recuse myself from that vote.
Thank you for that reminder. Perhaps we could have seen ahead and done that separately. So thank you.
I'm sorry, Councilmember Ford, I missed that too.
No worries.
Yes. All right. So we will vote on separating out the DEI appointments. Please call the roll.
Ford,
Aye.
Mugrower,
Aye.
Hanson,
Aye.
Miller,
Aye.
Wojciechowski,
Aye.
Erickson,
Aye.
Palmieri,
Aye.
carried 7.
Oh, wait, wasn't there an abstention? Oh, no, because we
Just to
voted
divide
on the,
it.
we voted on the remainder. Okay.
No, we voted to divide it.
So we've got them divided. And now let's vote on the appointments minus the DEI. So we'll take a motion and a second on that.
To move.
Second.
Erickson and Hanson. And please take the roll.
Ford,
Aye.
Mugrower,
Aye.
Hanson,
Aye.
Miller,
Aye.
Wojciechowski,
Aye.
Erickson,
Aye.
Palmieri,
Aye.
carried 7.
All right. And now the DEI appointments only. Motion and a second. Miller and Erickson. And discussion. Please call the roll.
Ford,
Present.
Mugrower,
Aye.
Hanson,
Aye.
Miller,
Aye.
Wojciechowski,
Aye.
Erickson,
Aye.
Palmieri,
Aye.
carried 6-1 present.
All right. Next, we move on to pending ordinances. Ordinance 21-245. Create and amend ordinances for electric scooters and electric personal assistive mobility devices. Amend general bicycle ordinance. Amend bike lanes ordinance and amend parks ordinance. We heard others speak that were registered previously, and we'll need a motion and a second, please, council.
So moved.
All right, Mugrower and Hanson, seconds. Discussion on 21-245. Councilmember Mugrower.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I won't make any motions to do anything until fellow council members have a chance to speak, but there's some confusion on this. For wherever it's coming from, there's confusion. For the public, for advocates of the e-scooters, e-bikes, we've got mobility impaired individuals, whether they're in wheelchairs or different devices. But there's lots of concern regarding what this ordinance does or does not allow, and I don't know that we're going to be able to clear it up in one meeting tonight in one vote. So I'm not sure if is it worth maybe laying over and we figure out a better way to communicate this just out to the public in the next 2 to 4 weeks. I don't know that 2 or 4 weeks delay on this would adversely affect it, unless somebody can tell me otherwise. But that might be something that we might like to do to try to help clear up any confusion on this. And I don't know the best way to do that, but it's just an idea. So that's what I've got on that. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilmember Mugrower. And I think that this actually might be able to be clarified rather simply by making the distinction and giving some definitions. But certainly, Councilmember Miller, go ahead. Oh, you're muted.
My apologies. Not to cut you off, Matt, but I think there is some confusion out there. I think some of my confusion went away today with some conversations, but I was hoping maybe we could hear some specifics from staff tonight. And then after maybe staff clarifies it to all of us, then we can make that decision to maybe lay it over. Is that fair?
I think that sounds reasonable. Seems that Councilmember Mugrower is agreeable. Other council members, questions before staff kind of spells out a little more? Let's see here. City Attorney Lawrence. Oh, wait, I'm sorry. Councilmember Wojciechowski.
I guess just to get the question out there before they start speaking so they can perhaps answer it. So I guess my interpretation of this ordinance is that it's basically creating, I don't know, the rule for electronic personal, what is it, electronic scooters and electronic personal assistive mobility device, kind of making those consistent. But one question I had, and I got a couple of emails about this, is how this would affect like electronic, like wheelchairs or things that someone with a disability needs to use. How would that affect that? Would that disallow someone from using that on the sidewalk? Because that would be one of my concerns.
Yes, and I think all council members received a number of those emails. And, as I understand it, perhaps the language by the state and, what we're looking at here may be a bit confusing because it's kind of like Kleenex and tissues. When we talk about scooters, some folks, visualize those assistive devices. So I'd like to hear from City Attorney Lawrenson if she would care to share with us.
I'm not quite sure what you're asking me, but I did send out an email earlier today addressing the question about whether it included motorized wheelchairs and those types of things. Everyone should have received a copy of that. Okay.
Did other council members get a chance to read that? Would anybody like to summarize?
Perhaps, Madam Mayor, I would suggest that the city attorney provide a little detail because our viewing audience may not necessarily have the luxury of getting Ms. Lawrenson's memo. And I think, Lynn, it's basically, can you paraphrase your memo?
Yeah, the reason we use the term electric scooters, which is, that one's fairly self-explanatory, but the electric assistive mobility devices, that's a statutory term. It's not something our office made up. It's what we're permitted to regulate by the statute. And now I get your Kleenex analogy. So when we talk about it, what electric assistive mobility devices are basically what we think of as segways or segway types of vehicles. I wouldn't recommend deviating from the statute terminology. I wouldn't normally recommend referencing a brand name in our ordinances, but I think we could probably make both the publication notice a little clearer and the ordinance by including a reference to Segway or Segway type vehicles in those, just to clarify that issue. And it's like people think of tissues as Kleenex and being the same. Kleenex is actually a name brand. Segway's the name brand, but because of the way the statute defines them as electric personal assistive vehicles, it does sound a little bit like a wheelchair or something. That is not how it's defined in the statute, but we could clarify that very easily.
So as I understand it, you're suggesting we clarify it in the notice of publication and the explanation. I believe one of the emails
as well as the ordinance. Yeah.
And the ordinance. I believe one of the other requests that came in via email was from Beth Roberts, asking if we could also add that it did not include electric wheelchairs, just to be clear.
Yep.
You can do that. I think the concern is that there's a lot of things this doesn't include, and then you're going to be adding exceptions. And electric wheelchairs or mobility scooters, the term scooters, I think, is what's thrown everybody off. That's where the mayor's Kleenex analogy is really apropos, because they're so generically called scooters, it makes it sound like we're regulating those. We are not regulating electric wheelchairs or those mobility type of devices for disabled people or other people who may need them on a short-term disability basis. We're not regulating those at all.
So the Is the big distinction between recreation and actual mobility assistance? I mean, would that be fair to say?
I'm going to punt to the city attorney.
The
Lynn, maybe another
distinction
way?
is that they're very specifically defined. So the
Uh-oh, we lost Lynn
an
for a
electric.
moment.
Okay. Am
We
I
lost
back?
your-
Yes.
Yeah, we lost your brilliance, Lynn. You got to
All right.
repeat it.
Just for a second. Just for a
That's
second.
okay. The difference is they're very, very specific definitions in the statute. And so and it was really good and now it's gone. And when it got lost for good. The definitions are very, very specific and they don't include the like wheelchairs and whatever. It's just the definitions aren't based on whether they're recreation or use. They're just very specific definitions. And that's the way the legislature did it. They tell us we can regulate these very specific items.
But we're not regulating electric wheelchairs or those mobility scooters that
Correct.
we're quite familiar with. So, and I appreciate Ms. Roberts' work. One of the divisions under her over at the county is the Aging Disability Resource Center. So she's obviously concerned about her clients, but they're totally unaffected by this ordinance. It's just that darn word scooter has thrown everybody off.
Well, and I believe some of the other confusion that came in is because of that state statute that specifically talks about personal assistive mobility devices. It just really is a little bit misleading.
It sure sounds like one of those mobility
Right.
scooters.
Right.
Yeah,
Sure.
but it's not.
Okay, so where we're at right now is Councilmember Mugrauer was suggesting we possibly separate things. Councilmember Miller was asking about perhaps a delay. After we've now heard a little more explanatory content, where are we at, Council? Other comments, questions? Councilmember Wojciechowski and then Ford. And then
Yes,
Hanson.
I'd like to kind of address the point that one of the speakers brought up. I think it was Mr. Cantor, about how it seems like this is kind of targeting electric scooters, but it almost sets a different precedent for electric bikes. I'm wondering if someone could speak more to that. I personally think that introducing electric scooters to our community is a good way, as a transportation method for maybe especially younger people who don't have cars. I personally think they should be let on sidewalks, but that's my own opinion. That's a different discussion. I remember when I was in Colorado, that was allowed. You could just get an electric scooter and go wherever on sidewalks or on bike lanes if it was a busy street. Different discussion to have, but I'm wondering if we could have some more clarification specifically on the point that Mr. Cantor brought up.
I can take that one. This ordinance is directed at electric scooters and the Segway types of vehicles. If you want us to address bikes, we can do that, but I would recommend doing, that was not what we were addressing with this particular ordinance. We would bring that to a future meeting if you have direction you want to give us on that.
Do we have anything in place already for electronic bikes or nothing right now?
No, Lynn, I think it's important to point out that bikes are allowed on sidewalks.
Correct.
By virtue of that, electric bikes are allowed on sidewalks.
Right. Because the electric bikes under this statute need to be treated the same as regular bicycles. And that's the different, so we would have to look at bicycles and electric bicycles comprehensively for that issue. That was not what we were focusing on with this ordinance, and that's why it's not addressed.
Okay, thank you for that clarification.
Yeah.
So I guess my point would just be to council is I don't understand why we're treating them differently. I know they're two separate issues, but it seems like we're setting a precedent for one and not the other. So I guess that's just a thought I've had, maybe something to think about in the future.
And if I could add even more mud to this murk. It's that there are also some questions coming up just today about trying to think of what they're called. Not hoverboard. Yeah, is it electric hoverboards that have the motorized, but they don't necessarily have like the handle like the Segway, and where do they fall? So a lot of other devices coming into this mix. I guess the question is, does council want to go ahead and weigh in specifically on the e-scooter and EPAMDs tonight, or wait? Councilmember, I'm sorry, Ford and then Hanson.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's worth weighing in. I think that we have specifically, right, vendors in the community that are interested in us weighing in on this topic. I think that was the impetus, but whether I'm wrong or not, I do suggest or want to make a motion based on the recommendations from the city attorney on how to address some of the confusion, to amend the ordinance to include a reference to Segway type vehicles with the definition of electric assistive mobility devices.
Do we have a second?
Second.
And maybe a friendly to also exclude or use the language that it does not include electric wheelchairs?
That I was not intending to include in the
Okay.
motion.
All right, so let's take the roll or discussion on Mr. Ford or Councilmember Ford's motion. All right, let's take the roll on that piece.
Oh, excuse me, Ford,
Aye.
Mugrower,
Aye.
Hanson,
Aye.
Miller, Miller,
I think I heard an aye.
Wojciechowski,
Aye.
Erickson, Palmieri,
Aye.
carried 7.
All right, so back to the resolution, and Councilmember Hanson was waiting patiently. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you, Madam Mayor. So I do agree with Mr. Cantor that we do need to have a discussion on e-bikes and how they are allowed for use in the city. I don't know if that's something I could work on during this break that we have until the next meeting, but being on the traffic and parking board now, I could get their input as well, dig a little bit deeper into that and bring something back for us all to look at. But we should definitely not be having 28 mile-an-hour bikes on sidewalks. And with that being said, treating them like regular bikes. We have bike lanes being put into our infrastructure now. If we need to make, certain leniences that they can use sidewalks going over the bridges and whatnot, that might be necessary. But we definitely, so we're not singling out e-scooters or other products like that. We definitely need to have a separate talk on e-bikes as well. So do I put that in a motion here to say bring that up for the agenda? No. Pam's saying no, or Lynn's saying no, but okay.
All right, so
We'll talk on that.
just to respond to that, though, I do believe that the Bike and Pedestrian Committee and the Traffic Committee did weigh in on this previously, and that went into some of the drafting by staff, as I recall.
Yes, but I think we need to have a little bit more of a deeper discussion on the things separately, including those on the sidewalk and the bikes on the sidewalk more so, because as it seemed to me, everything was included in one discussion together, not broken down as we're doing right now. Does that make sense? Okay.
So you making the motion, do we have a second?
There is no motion. She's just saying she's going to bring it up at the next traffic board meeting and she'll work with staff on it. We don't need a motion for that.
Just
I'm sorry.
there.
I didn't. I thought I heard motion in there previously. Okay.
Good.
Other council discussion? All right, please call the roll. Oh, Councilmember Eric, sorry, Wojciechowski?
One more question. Do we have any policy in place right now pertaining to electric scooters? So to say if this weren't, like if someone wants to use an electronic scooter now, are they able to, or what is the current policy, if anything?
City Attorney?
We currently do not have an ordinance regulating electronic scooters.
So right now, are they able to use them as they want to? Like, there's no punishment if someone were to be using one right now. I guess what I'm trying to get at.
Correct. Right now, they're not regulated except as they're regulated by state statute.
Yeah, the state gives us the ability to put in a regulation with their restrictions. If we're silent, they're allowed. But there's no regulation, no restriction, and whatever complaints we might get, we would be unable to enforce that.
Except for things like, if they were, I can't think of a good example right at the moment. Driving recklessly under the state statutes, there's stuff about driving recklessly or things like that. It would just be those types of very, very basic rules that are regulated by state statute.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, I guess maybe
part of the logic is getting ahead of that so that before they start taking off, we don't want to have to change the rules. They get on the street and then we change the rules and it looks very confusing.
Yeah. Well, I will be supporting this, but I think I'd like to see this revisited in the future just to be consistent with what we're doing with e-bikes and regular bikes. But just to get this going, because I know there was mention of a pilot program, and I would like to see that so we can get some better information to go forward. But I would like to revisit this in the future.
Other council discussion? I think the one thing that had me thinking is when an earlier speaker, one of the public comments, were discussing having them operating in the street. I'm concerned about like visibility and, are we able to, require, the reflectors and or perhaps some kind of tall flag or helmets or things to, if we're going to allow them in the street and not on the sidewalk, be somewhat protective there. So perhaps that's something that we can revisit after this pilot as well. All right, let's take the roll.
Ford,
Aye.
Mulbauer,
Aye.
Aye.
Miller,
Sorry. Aye.
Wojciechowski,
Aye.
Erickson.
Aye.
I'm sorry, Councilmember Mulbauer, I did not hear you.
Oh, it was aye.
Aye, thank you. Palmieri,
Aye.
carried 7.
All right, we'll move next to pending ordinance 21-246. Approve zone change from neighborhood mixed use district to neighborhood mixed use district with a plan development overlay for property located at 1903 Harrison Street. Plan Commission recommends approval. I have a motion and a second on 21-246.
So moved.
Second.
Ford and Erickson, discussion. Mr. Lyons, can you just give us a summary on this one?
Yes, this is a zone change to include a planned development overlay. So the restaurant can seek an outdoor seating area that is within 500 feet of 50 feet of a residentially zoned property. The applicant has worked with their neighbors to get a plan that's agreeable for them, and now they'd like to move forward with that outdoor dining area. It is dining only. There would be no outdoor entertainment added.
All right, thank you. Council, any further questions or discussion? All right, please take the roll.
Ford,
Aye.
Mugrower,
Aye.
Hanson,
Aye.
Miller,
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
Wojciechowski,
Aye.
Erickson,
Aye.
Palmieri,
Aye.
carried 7.
All right, thank you, everyone. So we're now to new ordinances. Ordinance 21-247 approves zone change. There would be no action on these first 3 items. Approve zone change from neighborhood mixed use to suburban mixed use district with a plan development overlay for properties located at the 1700 block of West 9th Avenue. Plan Commission recommends approval. And 21-248 approve zone change from urban mixed use to urban mixed use with a plan development overlay for properties located at 630 and 640 North Main Street. Plan Commission recommends approval. This one is Mark Lyons. Yes, he's still with us. Mr. Lyons, could you just give a description of what that project is, please?
Yeah, so this is redevelopment of the former auto repair site located at 630, 640 North Main Street. The applicant is proposing to redevelop it into a convenience store, gas station with a laundromat. In order to do so, it's a pretty tight urban site. They are seeking to add that plan development overlay so they can get the site to meet their needs.
So asking for flexibility on some unique situation.
Yeah, so being the urban nature of the site, there's a lot of existing facilities with the building and the parking lot that are in place that don't meet current code. So in order to redevelop the site, they need a little bit of flexibility through the plan development overlay.
And of course, Councilmember Ford's our liaison for Plan Commission. I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
I would just say the existing site is a mess. And I think that the sheer amount of work that needs to be done there is the rationale, at least the convincing rationale for me, why this needs to be a plan development.
And I think if I read correctly, that there may be some addition of some electric charging stations at the site for electric vehicles. I believe I read that.
Correct. One of the elements in the plan development is, I believe, 3 electronic charging stations located on the south property line. Excuse me, the south parking area. There's kind of 3 arrows you can see right in the bottom middle of the screen there. Those are identifying the 3 electrical vehicle charging stations.
So it looks like there's a very, very slim sliver of green. Is that the existing line of hedges that's already there? Or is that an anticipated impervious surface area added?
So a couple of elements, that is some added, some existing. Some of the brown area you see shown on the plan here will also need to be converted to green space as part of the plan development approval.
All right, that's a pretty significant impervious surface there. All right, again, no action on this item. Any other council members, questions, concerns, discussion? All right, let's move on to 21-249. Amend membership of Long Range Finance Committee. And let's see here. I'll just reference this. This was a request to revisit this ordinance in relation to the creation of the ordinance a number of years back, assigned 2 council liaison representatives. However, you know, this is for us to discuss whether or not we want to continue that practice, given that there are 7 of us and, you know, 23 plus boards and commissions, and some fairness there to other boards and commissions. But certainly, you know, Councilmember Mugrower has been on there for a while, and Councilmember Ford. Mr. Mr. Roloff or City Attorney Lawrenson, what was the original idea behind appointing two?
A lot of it had to do with the fact that there were two council members interested. But I think the stated reason was that because it had some financial issues and there would be, some issues that would go to council on a regular basis, that it may help to have two council members to offer multiple perspectives on what could be complex financial issues.
All right, again, there's no action on this item tonight. Do other council members have questions, concerns? All right, let's move on to 21-250. This will be voted on tonight. Approve closure for Bowen Street from East Irving Avenue to East Parkway Avenue. Staff recommends waiving the rules. I have a motion and a second on waiving the rules.
So moved.
Second.
Second by Erickson. First, Mugrauer motion. All right, any discussion on waiving the rules? Let's take a roll call.
Ford,
Aye.
Mugrower,
Aye.
Hanson,
Aye.
Miller,
Aye.
Wojciechowski,
Aye.
Erickson,
Aye.
Palmieri,
Aye.
carried 7.
All right, back to the original resolution, 21-250, approve closure of Bowen Street from East Irving Avenue to East Parkway Avenue. Staff recommend, we already waived the rules.
So moved.
Second.
All right, Mugrauer and Miller, and any discussion? Is Mr. Collins here? The closure from Bowen Street from East Irving to East Parkway, is this, can you share with us the length of time and purpose?
This is Public Works, Madam Mayor, so
Oh, sorry.
Mr. Robbie put his video on to answer.
Yes, I was gonna say, actually, Madam Mayor, that was a request from our water distribution. They have a long side lead service lateral that needs to be replaced. And this stretch of street is one that the code requires to stay open at all times, and it would just be very difficult to do the long side lead service replacement under traffic. So the closure, the length of time is going to be very short, day or two, while they're in there getting all the work done, and then they'll have to do some restoration temporarily while we have our sidewalk contractor come back and patch the concrete street at a later time, and they would do that under traffic.
So this is actually one of those like not very well known items that help our community with our health, welfare, and sanitation. And I guess I just want to kind of re-emphasize that a few years back, we decided that when these are done, we also send out letters to the surrounding residents that during that lead line replacement, that there's some educational materials out there about flushing your lines. Is that correct?
Yeah, this is one that I believe there was either an issue or the private side had already been done, so we need to get the public side done in accordance with the code. But certainly, as we are working on projects where there are lead services that need to be replaced, there's a lot of informational material that is sent out, in addition to the water distribution staff, meeting with the property owners.
All right, so folks in that area may want to check out those materials. Motion and a second. Already had it. It's on the floor. Let's take the roll call.
Ford,
Aye.
Mugrower,
Aye.
Hanson,
Aye.
Miller,
Aye.
Wojciechowski,
Aye.
Erickson,
Aye.
Palmieri,
Aye.
carried 7.
All right, next new ordinance 21-251. Approve closure of Washington Avenue from Bowen Street to Hazel Street. Staff recommends waiving the rules. And we'll take a motion in a second.
I move we waive the rules, adopt on first reading.
Second.
Second.
All right, please take the roll on waiving the rules.
Ford,
Aye.
Overauer,
Aye.
Hanson,
Aye.
Miller,
Aye.
Wojciechowski,
Aye.
Erickson,
Aye.
Palmieri,
Aye.
carried 7.
All right, and back to the original resolution 21-251, approve closure Washington Avenue from Bowen Street to Hazel Street.
So moved.
McGrawer and Erickson, discussion. Is this, Mr. Robbie, is this another short closure for just a couple of days?
Yes, this would be another closure for a alongside lead service lateral replacement.
All right, thank you. Other council member questions? Please take the roll.
Ford,
Aye.
Overauer,
Aye.
Hanson,
Aye.
Miller,
Aye.
Wojciechowski,
Aye.
Erickson,
Aye.
Palmieri,
Aye.
carried 7.
All right, next, our last new ordinance tonight is ordinance 21-252, amend rules pertaining to council, board and commission meetings in response to COVID-19 coronavirus emergency to provide for council to meet in person, boards and commissions to meet in person or through remote means, and to set forth rules for remote participation at meetings. Staff recommends waiving the rules. Do we have a motion and a second on waiving the rules?
So moved to waive the rules.
Ford and Miller. All right, please take the roll on waiving the rules.
Ford,
Aye.
Overauer,
Aye.
Hanson,
Aye.
Miller,
Aye.
Wojciechowski,
Aye.
Erickson,
Aye.
Palmieri,
Aye.
carried 7.
All right, and back to the resolution, full resolution 21-252. Motion and a second.
So moved.
All right, Erickson and Miller. Discussion on amending the rules on our in-person and virtual remote participation. Councilmember Ford.
I'll just say I'm glad we're doing it. Looking forward to seeing you all in person.
And this would take effect May 25th. Any other council discussion? All right, please take the roll.
Ford,
Aye.
Overauer,
Aye.
Hanson,
Aye.
Miller,
Aye.
Wojciechowski,
Aye.
Erickson,
Aye.
Palmieri,
Aye.
carried 7.
All right, next we have a new resolution 21-253, approved general development plan and specific implementation plan for outdoor seating at 1903 Harrison Street. Plan Commission recommends approval, and this relates back to an earlier, I think, zone change, but this is the general development plan and specific implementation plan. We have a motion and a second, please. Miller and
Second.
McGrawer. Discussion. Mr. Lyons, just a quick summary.
Yes, Mayor. This is the plan development portion of the rezoning that we were discussing earlier, where the applicant is requesting to put a temporary outdoor patio off the west side of the building. This would only be kind of during the spring, summer, fall months when the weather is decent, and then it would be removed in the winter. Due to that outdoor seating area being within 50 feet of the adjoining residential property, the only way the applicant requested is to go through the plan development process. This was workshopped prior to Plan Commission action. Neighborhood meeting took place to discuss with the neighborhood residents, and they were supportive of this kind of seasonal outdoor seating area for the restaurant bar.
Okay, and just to, for folks who are asking out there, this is more than just like a little gazebo pop-up canopy thing, right? Because it's a little bit more substantial, but it's just not year-round. Is that right?
Correct. They have some fencing around it, some essentially almost like booths and planters and stuff to create a nice outdoor space at their facility, but it isn't permanently attached, so they can remove it in the winter when it's not necessary, and kind of retain the parking that's there presently.
All right, thank you. Any other council questions or discussion? Seeing none, let's take the roll.
Ford,
Aye.
Mugrower,
Aye.
Hanson,
Aye.
Miller,
Aye.
Wojciechowski,
Aye.
Erickson,
Aye.
Palmieri,
Aye.
carried 7.
All right, we are at council discussion and direction to city manager and future agenda items. Let's see here. We've got a future workshop with the Oshkosh Area School District Board, the quarterly meeting, which will be virtual. There are tentative topics listed in our agenda packet, but I will just add that at the community sounding board meeting this morning, Mr. Gunlock from the OASD had referenced some really interesting information based on a question I was asking. And Mr. Miller, this may be right up your expertise because it was mentioned that there's some state data and also some local data that is being gathered and assembled with relation to broadband, and I guess the best way to describe it is like a valve turning down the availability based on perhaps non-payment in an area, and some hotspot mapping with that to show some of the areas, I believe, of the city or the school district, I should say. So, I had just asked him if he could share that information with us if it was available at the 20th meeting. I'm not sure it was going to be available. Do you recall, Mr. Roloff, if Mr. Gunlock said it would or would not be available by the 20th or sometime shortly thereafter?
I think he felt that he could, be able to explain what information they found out, and I can certainly talk to Mr. Miller offline in advance of that meeting.
Yeah, so I just throw that out there if folks are interested in learning a little bit more about that. And then certainly we have the Clearwell workshop.
Yes, Madam Mayor, that'll be at 5:15. The council had asked that we put it on the front end, which we can do. And if I may, Madam Mayor, I was going to mention one, for an agenda item for the next meeting as well, since we're talking about the 25th. Mr. Fitzpatrick had sent the council a memo to remind them that per a council resolution from 2015, after every mayoral election, we're to bring up the topic of review of council compensation. So we'll be putting that on the next agenda. If council were to do something, create basically an ad hoc type of committee, but that's not for discussion tonight. But given Mr. Fitzpatrick's memo, I'd suggest putting it on the next agenda.
Council want to have that discussion then? All right.
That's when they would have.
And then we have the joint workshop for the Common Council, the Redevelopment Authority, Sustainability Advisory Board, Advisory Parks Board, and Plan Commission to discuss Chapter 30 subdivision code updates and affordable housing, proposing June 10th at 6 p.m. I assume council has responded to the availability of that date and time. Is everybody available? I know that it's still got to go out to the other entities, but that will be obviously virtual because of the number of people expected. Future meeting, May 19th with council and the redevelopment authority to hear the proposals. Some exciting proposals coming forth on 43 East 7th down in the Sawdust District, also virtual. And then city manager, you have an item on here that you'd like to get some direction on or some input from council on potential uses of the American Rescue Plan Act funds.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, I put this on the last agenda to really just get the discussion started. But as you may or may not know, the feds came out with the rules regarding the use of our ARPA funds. I have not had the opportunity or pleasure or non-pleasure of reading it. But in advance of that, staff and I had put together this memo about analysis of possible uses. And I think, I'd given you some ideas in terms of, how much we may necessarily, talk about initially recommending for use, but not committing all of our resources. And then what process we might want to follow. So part of me is to get some feedback from council. I absolutely believe and am convinced that we'll benefit from having some some good public input on this. Some of it for no other reason, just so the public's aware of what limitations we have in terms of usage, but also what flexibility we have as well. And there's a little bit of both. Even though I haven't read the whole document yet, based on what I'd heard as things were getting prepared, I think we do have some flexibility. But as the mayor and I were, at a meeting this morning, and we explained 20 million is a lot of money, but that can get gobbled up very quickly without some kind of general direction. The categories I gave you were not necessarily directly from the Fed. Some were those initial 4 general categories, but I actually identified 8 types of strategies, and that included a lot of subcategories. It's really about, if we want to, for example, solicit proposals from nonprofit entities, it would make sense to do a process, and I would suggest something similar to what we do for the public service grants for our community development block grant program. It's probably the closest thing we're going to come to that. And certainly, develop an application for that. I have told staff that I would, for internal type of capital type projects or other type of internal things, that we would follow a process similar to our capital improvement requests. We're actually going through that right now. So we'll probably have a very good start to all of the capital projects that are there. There might be an opportunity to identify projects for funding with ARPA rather than our normal borrowing or whatever for capital projects. But again, that's going to ultimately be council making that decision. And then I would say everything else. If a citizen just has, hey, I would like to suggest to council this or that, whether it's, I certainly am not a big fan of recommending operating costs because of the one-time nature of this, but whether it's operating or capital costs or just, I think council should consider this. Give an opportunity for citizens to give us something that we have, that we can put on a form so that we have those types of suggestions, as well as having a general public input session. That's kind of what I'm envisioning. But ultimately, since the council's making the final call on this, what would you like to see in terms of getting project ideas? Are there any categories that are on this sheet that are missing? I would like you to add this or that. Mayor and I can't remember the one, Mayor, this morning you mentioned to me, but I said, well, does it fit any of the categories? And I think we got off topic before we answered our own question, but if there's a category that's missing, let's get it out there so that we can say, okay, here's some other things. The purpose of that analysis was to identify, does it meet a strategic plan goal or one of the council goals that they've given for me, or are they anything within the initial ARPA type of category? So that's what that was intended to. But now I really just want to get some thoughts and guidance and ideas from council so that we can put something together to get the ball rolling on public input.
You were muted, but I wasn't sure if you were
No,
calling.
I'm muted. Yes.
Oh.
Go ahead, Councilmember Wojciechowski.
Mark, I'm hoping, could you just briefly maybe explain to the public? So you sent out a memo to us, to council, and as well to the Joint Finance Committee, specifically about the day-by-day warming shelter kind of opportunity, I see it, that we could use ARPA funds for. I'm wondering if you could speak to that, because it's something I support, and I think it's something the community would greatly support as well.
Well, thank you for that question, because one of the bigger issues that the council will have to deal with is support for nonprofit entities. That is kind of a policy decision. But when the issue of homelessness came up, there are multiple locations within our strategic plan, as well as a specific goal that council gave me, that gave me the belief that it was appropriate to, for lack of a better term, my term, sticking my neck out a little bit to say, I think we need to focus on this one. It's an easy one for me to stick my neck out on, because the council said at the beginning of the year, Mark, we want you to look into homelessness. The COVID pandemic has highlighted this as a specific issue that we need to address. So it was kind of easy for me to make that leap in terms of that agency, because that is a genuine issue that we need to address. I have had discussions with County Executive Damel, and I had conversations with previous County Executive Harris, and Mr. Damel recognizes, Mr. Harris did, that homelessness is not just a city of Oshkosh issue. In the Fox cities, there's 2 shelters. So people are either going to Oshkosh or they're going to Appleton. And that's just a fact. And I would argue that at a greater state level, that homeless from Green Lake County and Waushara County are ultimately going to Oshkosh or Appleton, because that's the only real location where they can get their urgent, acute housing needs addressed. So I think there is a legitimate issue about a statewide concern. So Mr. Damel is prepared to set aside some funds that the county board will have to approve. As you know, as a previous county board member, that process is going to need to get followed. And I'm sure county board's going to want to weigh in, council's going to want to weigh in. So it's one of those that I think out of the gate that I'm very comfortable eyeballing, earmarking, roughly $1 million. We're aware that day by day may be needing as much as $3.5 million in capital funds. $1 million represents 5% of our allocation. And I'm being very rough with the numbers, using 20 million. 5% of the county's number is about $1.5 million. If those two can be allocated by the respective legislative bodies, we're up to $2.5 million. Then I think we can make a very compelling case to the state, because I think Secretary of Administration Brennan had a conference call with Mayor Palmieri and I, and he indicated that there were some funds that were being identified to address homelessness. And given that we're the 8th largest city in the state, we are an area where homeless come to because of the services we provide. And we should be proud of the services that we provide, but there's a cost. And I think there's a way to do this. And I think we can make a compelling case to the state that state assistance in this is also appropriate. So thank you for bringing it up. That's kind of the rough idea. That would get us to the 3.5 if my vision there falls into place. But then day by day can focus on going to the philanthropic community and saying, we need ongoing support to run this on a year-round basis, because the cost to run this on a year-round basis is going to be much greater than what they're currently paying for just a 6-month facility. And I think day by day recognizes that it's not just about sheltering. It's about moving their guests on to the next level in the housing continuum that we've talked about. And so, long answer to your question, but I think you wanted me to do a little bit of a commercial message there.
basically. So I appreciate you taking initiative on that. I just know talking to people in the community, I have heard just in general addressing homelessness as a top issue for a lot of people. So I think it is important, and I look forward to it hopefully coming to council. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilmember Ford.
Yeah,
And
thanks.
and then Mugrauer.
City Manager Roloff. Just from my point of view, I mean, I hope we have formal mechanisms for public input. So that would be right, different ways, different times of day, different mechanisms, digital, whatever, that people can give us their input. I hope that we have a very clear guiding philosophy for how we're spending this money, something that we can communicate to the public. I don't know if that is areas of our strategic plan that were negatively impacted by COVID-19, or if it's some, our annual goals. I don't know what that narrative is, but I think it's so important that it's there, because it really is a kind of a one-shot opportunity here, and we need to have some type of guiding framework. And then 3, on the nonprofit issue, I think it's a great idea to get the nonprofit sector involved, but I do think it's important that we have a competitive process. If we do start getting in the business of funding nonprofits, that we have measurable goals for what we expect out of our contracts. I know it's not a formal contract, but if we're funding nonprofit organizations, we're giving them a contract with some expectations, and that we have somebody at the city that's kind of on point on that, to kind of keep us abreast of what's happening with those funds. Don't want us to be in a situation where we're funding the usual suspects just because we have this money to use, because that's not going to get us the collective impact we need. Thanks.
All right, and Councilmember Mugrauer.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councilmember Ford hit it pretty clearly there. I just want to kind of piggyback on a few additional points. I don't think at this point in the process it's too appropriate for council to get too big-eyed on specific individual projects that they want to earmark for, except for, I think Mark has identified one of the glaring ones, and it couldn't be clear. We gave it to him as a goal for this year to help address it. In fact, I think the goal was to end it. Lofty goal, correct? But that we address that we try to make a substantive impact on that issue. Along the lines of what Mr. Ford was conveying, though, I conveyed this to City Manager Roloff a little while back. We've got to use processes that are already in place. We shouldn't be attempting to create new processes on the fly. Use tried and true methods to try to determine what's the best use of these funds. And he alluded to it already before. If it's city projects, we're going to use the CIP process that they have used, that they've scored, that we should try to use those types of mechanisms that are already in place, and so that it removes any potential biases from creating a new process. And if we are getting into philanthropic and supporting the nonprofits, is there a way to use, Community Foundation, which has a solid process in place for how they award, how they receive those requests, or is there just a way to partner with them in these endeavors? Those would be my thoughts. So, but absolutely supportive of Mark's idea in terms of what we potentially could do in partnering with Day by Day on one individual project. So appreciate the time. Thank you.
And I'll just share that I listened to the State of the Tribes Wisconsin address today, and I was really moved because there was, a discussion by the Lac du Flambeau chairman, John Johnson Sr., talking about the balance between economic development and, our environmental impact, our 7 generations impact, as something that, we have a sustainability plan. We're also, trying to address our economic development, but it doesn't have to be either or, zero sum, right? They both can coexist. So, those guiding principles that we have spent a lot of time, I feel pretty strongly that we look at the strategic plan as some of the that guiding philosophy, as Councilmember Ford and Mugrauer were referring to. But I did want to just respond to Councilmember Wojciechowski. there was a continuum of care housing summit this week that I attended over a few hours that highlighted this discussion about the year-round, day-by-day, but also some of the other. It was the Housing Authority who hosted, but there were Oshkosh Kids Foundation and a handful of other projects and things that are going on to address kind of the continuum of care from the most acute, which is what we're talking about here with day by day, into transitional and graduating on to other levels of the continuum and outside of the continuum. So there are some really interesting details coming out in the community right now, in addition to this discussion to address homelessness. Yes, Councilmember Erickson.
Thank you. I just want to kind of lift up with what Councilmember Ford had mentioned. I'm just hoping to kind of see a pretty robust kind of community engagement plan, having a few different options for folks to participate and voice their opinion. So that's a piece that I'm looking for in this.
Yes, frequent and often, or I'm sorry, multiple avenues and frequent.
A couple of the ideas, as I've been listening to some of these is, an obvious one is we can use Palco. That's one way to do it. That might be limiting though, because it's just an online type of thing. But I think a general solicitation form, a suggestion form, for lack of a better term, but giving people the opportunity to just tell us what they think. I think there might be some value in that. There might be a hidden gem amongst that. If somebody suggests day by day and they want to take credit for it, I'm cool with that. But there'll be lots of different ideas. Hey, did you ever think of this or that? We're going to get any number of things. But in terms of mining for good information, for good ideas, I guess that's what I'm hearing council say. Let's just kind of dig till we see something that might just kind of pop the light bulb. Very good. I'm up to the challenge. It'll be fun.
I think if you don't mind if I add one more little thing, I guess the thing that we and the public need to just remember, we've got till the end of 2024 to spend the funds. It doesn't have to be an immediate address. That we can. I don't want to slow play it by any means either, because there's definitely groups and entities and things that need addressing, but that we have time to try to put together a coherent plan on how to spend this once. This is a once in a generational, if not longer, sum of money that we're never going to come into again. We've got to get the most bang for the buck, and so we've got to do it right, because we can't undo it. So.
All right. We have a council member announcement and statements. Report of council liaison for boards and commissions. Anyone? Council members? Councilmember Wojciechowski?
I'm not officially on SAB, Sustainability Advisory Board, quite yet, but I did attend their previous meeting. They had presentations from students at UWO on projects where we can become more sustainable and save money. And a lot of them were really great. And actually, I foresee maybe some of them coming to the council or to SAB in the future. But I did mention to them about the ARPA funds just to start generating ideas. So it is a topic for the next meeting, to just think of ideas, sustainable ideas that could potentially use ARPA funds. But a lot of great projects from the students. So I'm hoping that when they do their complete report, that they can be sent to council.
Yes, that's what I was going to double check with you, because I was also listening in and on the phone, and it seemed like at the end they did indicate they were going to forward that final report with maybe even some revisions to what we heard. So it's always exciting this time of year to hear those student presentations, and they're very realizable, right? The ones we heard. So great, cool. I just have one. Parks Advisory Board met last night, and we took a tour of the beach house out at Menominee Park. and some other items along in Menominee Park. And so that was discussed about some of the potential long overdue repairs that are needed out there at Menominee Park. And we visited with the new Eagle Cayuga. I shouldn't say visited with, we observed him as he observed us. And so that was really all I have for our Parks Advisory Board. All right, looks like we have Councilmember Miller has something on mask ordinances in Green Bay and De Pere. Councilmember Miller.
Thank you, Mayor. I was asked to reach out to the council specifically by, yeah, I think we're all getting the same emails and everything, but I think the business community has really reached out to me since our last meeting. They asked me to talk about it a little bit, and since then I see Green Bay and De Pere as their mask ordinances have lapsed or gone away. But the business community, both small and big, but let's focus on the small right now, especially the restaurants are just they're just crippled by this thing, and they think lifting the mask ordinance or rescinding the mask ordinance would greatly help them just be consistent with our other communities. There's some pretty tragic stories out there right now, and it's been a very depressing couple of days for me listening to some of these stories. But I would ask that our council would take a look at rescinding this as soon as possible. Now, as I look at our calendar, the next possible meeting would be the next one, and I don't know who's got a calendar in front of them, but when does the ordinance actually lapse, and is there an opportunity that's worthwhile to rescind this prior to that? Anybody got a calendar in front of them? Mark, maybe?
Well,
Manager?
yeah, my reading of council's action from the last meeting was that it expires on May 31. In keeping with other ordinances, we would put another 30-day extension on the agenda for council's consideration at the May 25th meeting, and council could, if they take no action on that, the ordinance would expire. Even though there was that provision that Councilmember Ford added based on the metrics are not there yet. We're still in the mid-30s. I think Mr. Fitzpatrick had called it up earlier today, and it's still only in the 35% range. So so by next week we'll report whatever that number is. I don't think it'll be near 50%. So then council can decide, do they want to extend it, get another 30 days, amend it some other way, or just let it expire?
And I think there's some confusion out there, and Mike, correct me if I'm wrong. I think people think that it's based on your amendment, but it's actually just another option. Is that accurate?
Yeah, happy to chime in. Our last
Thank you.
Our last meeting 2 weeks ago, before the meeting started, we had 2 ways to end the mandate. After the meeting ended, we had 3 ways to end the mandate. I think that was clear in the meeting. There was a desire from the community for a metric that was there to address one of Councilmember Mugrauer's continuous comments about this only ends when 4 of us decide to end it. So that was designed to take that out of our hands. It does not preclude us from still ending it that way. In fact, under our policy, which we passed, right, 5-2 last time, that's exactly what we're going to have to do on May 25th, is decide whether or not it's time to extend it or time to end it.
And I'll just share, just to be clear, because I was in contact with Mayor Genrich's office and Mayor Boyd's office of Green Bay and De Pere. They allowed their ordinances to sunset or expire on May 5th, which was the intent. And so, you know, at this point, as was pointed out, ours would expire on at the last day of May. So for something else as far as action to happen on May 25th, it's kind of like a matter of like 5 or 6 days difference, unless it was determined, you know, by council to extend it, as I understand it. Councilmember Ford?
Yeah, I mean, we could always, right, we're looking ahead here, we could always amend it to sunset immediately at our next meeting. But I certainly urge you, Councilmember Miller, and anybody that's listening to hear, to really consider the fact that it's not good. I don't think it's good practice for us to be in the habit of immediately revisiting policy decisions after we made them. You know, I think there's an argument to be made if we've made the decision on May 25th to get rid of it, let it sunset May 31st. Okay, we made the decision on May 25th. Maybe there's a logic there to ending it then immediately. But I do think it's really important to honor the policy that we passed at our last meeting and move on from there.
Thank you all.
All right, thank you. Next, we have city manager announcements and statements. City Manager Roloff.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. There's an item in your agenda packet regarding a professional services agreement for the wastewater treatment plant concrete condition assessment. That's in our capital improvement program contract with Donahue and Associates. I've got the outstanding issues item in there, and I've provided you with an update of separate from this is a update on goals, the annual goals for council, and I gave you a large part of that with an oral report based on Councilmember Wojciechowski's question. Happy to answer any questions you might have regarding that or any of the other outstanding issues. And then if you well, let me ask that. If you have any questions, happy to answer those before I get to the COVID-19 update. If not, and I'm certainly happy to go back. Mr. Newman, it's kind of relevant to the previous discussion that Councilmember Miller brought up, but I had it planned for this section. Just to give you a little update on where the percentage is, Mr. Newman has it. So Mr. Newman, if you could share the screen, please. This comes from the counties. The operative one from your ordinance is the one on the right, residents that have completed the COVID-19 vaccine series, whether it's one with Johnson & Johnson or two with Moderna, Pfizer, that's at 36%. So we're still, short of the 50% threshold that was in the ordinance. But that's the measure that we're looking at on a regular basis. So we've passed the 35% mark, but we're still pretty short of the 50%. And unless there's any questions, that's all I have, Madam Mayor.
Any other questions on the COVID-19 update, comments? Just want to encourage, as many folks as possible, if it's in your desire to get vaccinated, there are so many opportunities right now to do that in multiple locations, multiple times a day. Many of them do not require an appointment. So if you're interested, I think Councilmember Erickson, is it still a COVID-19 hotline that folks can call for that to find out about vaccinations? 232-3126?
3026 or
3026.
wcvaccine.org has all the locations for any vaccinator in the county.
And I believe there's even groups of folks out there providing rides for people who don't have transportation, if I understood that correctly. Great. All right, with that, folks, we'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All right, Mugrauer and Erickson, please take the roll.
Ford,
Aye.
Mugrauer,
Aye.
Hanson,
Aye.
Miller,
Aye.
Wojciechowski,
Aye.
Erickson,
Aye.
Palmieri,
Aye.
carried 7. We are adjourned.
Good night, everyone.
So long.